The BMW M badge used to mean high performance, cutting-edge technology, cars built by engineers with hair on their chest and no marketing department to answer to. But now BMW M means ugly electric cars, overpriced body kits, and an SUV that weighs more than your childhood trauma. And the internet hasn't been shy in letting them know. BMW M has changed, but the thing that the entire internet doesn't understand is that M was always changing. This was always the future for the M badge. We just weren't paying attention. And I can prove it to you. Think back to BMW M's greatest hits, cars like the E39 M5. On the outside, it's an ordinary family sedan, but at its core was a 400 horsepower naturally aspirated V8, the first M car ever to use a V8. And the only way to transfer that power to the rear wheels was through a manual gearbox. No adaptive dampers, no electronic nannies, no drive modes. If you wanted this car, you had to do all the driving yourself. And what a drive it was, be it blasting down the Autobahn at over 180 miles per hour, or having a dance partner for twisty canyon roads or B roads. It was always the driver's choice. And some of you youngins probably don't know about this, but back in the day, we had something called feedback. It was where you could feel the road texture through the steering wheel. You could feel the yaw through your butt. And the E39 was one of the goats when it came to feel and feedback. It's the same reason that Mate Rimac drives one every day on the way to building his electric hypercars. And here's the thing, when the E39 came out in 1998, BMW M had already been producing masterpieces for 26 years. Yes, the M division was born in 1972, and it was for one reason and one reason only: racing. M, after all, stands for motorsports. And BMW M built its reputation by injecting that motorsports DNA into their road cars. That journey, of course, started with the BMW M1. Well, technically, it started with the BMW 3.0 CSL and then the 530 MLE, but the first proper M car was in fact the M1. What a car it was. Designed to go up against Porsche in Group 5 racing, BMW initially partnered with none other than Lamborghini to make a mid-engined homologation car. And then Lambo kinda started going out of business, so BMW took over the project. And what they ended up with was a classic 80s combination. A Giugiaro designed wedge shape with a 3.5 liter straight six behind the driver, one that was developed by Paul Roche. You know, the guy that designed the engine in the McLaren F1. This BMW M1 engine though had 6 throttle bodies, twin cams, 4 valves per cylinder, all to make 273 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque. The final car weighed under 2,900 pounds, and you know what they did with it? They went racing. It raced at Le Mans, it raced in rally, hell, it had its own one-make series for 2 years, and the winners of those were Niki Lauda and Nelson Piquet. The M1 was the perfect motorsports banner for BMW and showed the world that they could 100% make race cars better than anyone else. But there was one small issue. It was really freaking expensive. This was a bespoke, hand-built car with Lambo DNA, and as such, they only produced 453 of them, with only 399 actually seeing public roads. And no matter how awesome your car is, if there aren't enough for any to ever be seen on the road, then they're probably not doing much for your brand. So it was here that BMW M realized that they needed to make the shift into road cars. And well, that was easy enough because BMW was already making plenty of cars that could be souped up. Enter, of course, the legendary E30 M3. What started as a lowly BMW 3 Series was transformed into a car with one purpose: to win races. In fact, the whole reason we have the car is because BMW had to sell 5,000 of them so that it would be legal for Group A racing. And race, it did, it dominated even. In fact, we have a whole video on how it became the most successful car in DTM at the time. And this little road-going car wasn't rocket science. There were no fancy turbos, no complicated engineering. It just had a high-revving 2.3 liter four-banger that made around 200 horsepower. In today's world, 200 horsepower is barely hot hatch territory, but the numbers weren't important. it was how it all felt. The car was praised for being razor sharp, lightweight, and supremely connected to the driver. The gearbox was a dogleg developed on the racetrack, as was its suspension tuning. Every single input, steering, throttle, brakes, shifting, it all had this sense of immediacy and communication that made the driver the star of the show. And it's cars like the E30 M3 and E39 M5 that perfectly exemplify what made the BMW M badge so special. A badge that had to be earned through racing dominance. In fact, go Google God's Chariot and then go to images and tell me in the comments what car shows up. Depending on who you ask though, the M division was just getting started. In the middle of the E39 M5 era, BMW M came out with possibly their most famous model ever, the E46 M3. That's right, the car that Razor heartlessly stole from you in Most Wanted, leaving you to drive a Cobalt SS. The E46 M3 had the world's most powerful, naturally aspirated six-cylinder of its time, and a chassis that was so perfect you would take the long way home every single day. Cracked subframes aside, the car was pretty much perfect. Of course, if you were balling out in 2004, you could have one of those, or you could have a Formula One inspired V10 sedan, aka the new E60 M5. It had a 5-liter V10 that revved to 8,250 RPM and made 500 horsepower. And if you're a Yank like myself, you could pair that to a 6-speed manual transmission too. Each of these M cars were an era-defining moment. Cars that married an exceptional driving experience to the cutting edge of performance. And if you were around in the mid-2000s, BMW M had a legendary status that just couldn't be denied. But, like the saying goes, the only constant is change. And whether we liked it or not, BMW M was constantly changing, and this time, I'm not so sure it was in the right direction. What is in the right direction is the all-new John Wick Ford Mustang from Fanhome, the sponsor of today's video. Fanhome's new 1/8 scale Mustang is a perfect recreation of the famous movie muscle car driven by none other than Baba Yaga himself. Made of die-cast metal and injection molded plastics, this model Mustang comes painted and ready for assembly. The doors and windows open, and the lights, horn, and engine can all be activated by remote control. And with Fanhome's subscription, you get new pieces to assemble every month straight to your door. And this isn't your average car model. This is an official reproduction of the original movie icon. An icon that'll be right at home on your desk or as a trophy in the garage. So get your own at the link in the description and start your collection with Fanhome. Enter the 2010s. The world was shifting away from the carefree days of old. Stricter emissions, new safety technologies, and shifts in consumer taste were coming. And in that changing tide, BMW M was kind of being swept away. One big component of that was the introduction of the Spoolie Boys, aka turbochargers. For decades, M cars were naturally aspirated. There was a certain excitement to revving an engine to the ragged edge and hearing that 8,000 RPM sound through a row of individual throttle bodies. But when the new F10 generation M5 came out in 2011, all of that changed. The screaming V10 was gone, and in its place, a twin-turbo V8. In the case of the legendary E46 M3, the next generation actually went to an NA V8 in 2007, but in 2014, the unthinkable happened again, this time to the M3. The NA V8 was dropped for a 3-liter twin-turbo straight 6. Turns out, there was a replacement for displacement, and BMW called it turbocharging. Now, to be fair, both the F10 M5 and F80 M3 were pretty cool cars. The M3 made crazy torque, 406 pound-feet to be exact, which was 110 pound-feet more than the old V8. The M5 was even more of a powerhouse, making 553 horsepower and 502 pound-feet of torque. But still, purists were hesitant to accept it. The car was objectively faster, yes, but it felt different. And the initial reviews were mixed, to put it simply. The M3 lacked that tactile magic that everyone raved about in the E46 and even the E90. The steering was electronically assisted, the turbo lag was pretty evident, and most importantly, the sound was gone.
Which, hey, let's be fair, the E46 sounded like farting through a box of bolts, but it was better than the muted whooshing of this new turbo power plant. Of course, to make up for this, BMW engineers resorted to artificial engine sounds through the speakers, and not only did it sound kinda bad, but for die-hard M fans, this really felt like a loss of authenticity. Of course, let me be clear here. The F80 M3 and even its sibling, the first ever M4, essentially just the coupe M3, were very much capable cars. Reviewers like Nico from The Drive said that speed, performance, and usability were blended together in a way that older cars couldn't fully do. And I 100% agree with that. The M3 and M4 were just as comfortable on side streets as they were on canyon roads as they were on the racetrack. But Nico followed up that review by reminding us that there was still an absence of verve or enthusiasm. The car did everything right, but somehow did it all with less soul than each previous generation. It was as if in making the M3 quicker and more polished, BMW had sanded off a few rough edges that actually made enthusiasts fall in love with the older M cars. And right when enthusiasts started to feel like the M division were losing their touch, they came out with one of the greatest modern BMW drivers cars, the 1M. Yes, I said 1M, not M1. BMW wanted to make sure people didn't confuse the OG supercar M1 with the new 1M, which was based on the 1 Series, but that doesn't matter. You know how BMW M was originally a tiny skunkworks team inside of BMW? Well, the M division got so big on their own that they had their own skunkworks team. And this was the stinkiest skunk yet. Yeah, I don't know why I just said that. Skunkworks is just a weird word. Do skunks secretly work on engineering projects in their free time? I don't know. This Skunkworks team was aware that their latest offerings were kind of meh. The F80 M3 was 3,600 pounds and full of all sorts of luxuries that were unbecoming of a sports car. So they decided to take the smallest car that BMW made, grab a spare twin-turbo inline-6 out of the Z4, and give it a whole host of suspension and handling upgrades. The end result was a sub 3,300 pound, 335 horsepower pocket rocket with minimal frills and a 6-speed manual. One that had many reviewers questioning whether or not the M3 was truly the king of M cars or not. You'll notice, of course, that it didn't get an M engine. The N54 in the 1M made 80 horsepower less than the S55 in the M3. BMW will tell you that it didn't need that much power, but I'd venture to say that they didn't want this little science project to outshine their big budget volume seller in every test. Speaking of sales though, the 1M was supposed to be limited to 2,700 units, but it was so freaking popular that they ended up making over 6,300. So then, BMW M proved that they could absolutely make a car that was in the ethos of the original M cars, lightweight, fun to drive, all while still embracing turbocharging. But the 1M's back to basics methods weren't gonna last, because it turns out at that point in time, the entire M philosophy was shifting. BMW had already begun expanding its M brand in ways that a 90s Beamer enthusiast could never imagine. Because by 2010, we got M SUVs. I'm gonna be honest, if you pitched the idea of a 5,000 pound M badge tank to the OG M engineers, they probably would have dropped dead of heart failure right there. But that was just the reality of where the market was heading. That same year, we got the X5M and X6M. At that point in time, BMW's M brand was known for sports sedans and coupes, and an SUV just seemed like heresy. But here's the kicker, customers loved it. They sold a bajillion of them, and it opened up a whole new market for BMW. And the success of those performance SUVs brought in profits that allowed BMW to reinvest into making better sports cars. It was a win-win. It was the same thing that a lot of other brands like Porsche were doing. But then the BMW accountants thought, if we can M the SUVs, then why can't we M every other car? To which you might reply, you already do M all the other cars. There's the M2 and M3 and M4. But no, we mean all the cars. Introducing the M performance models. The M240i's, M340i's, the X5, M50i. These weren't full-on M cars, but they were optioned out versions of regular BMWs. Now, you could get the flavor of an M car, but without the M car price tag. It was smart business for BMW. Now they were selling highly optioned versions of their standard cars because people wanted to be part of the M club. But if you were the owner of a E30 M3 or a E39 M5, you kind of had to take a look at that and think, what the heck does M even mean anymore? Your mom's X3 crossover might have an M40i badge on it, and your neighbor's 3 Series has an M Sport package with M logos on the seats, but really nothing else. Even BMW's electric cars now have M badges on them. BMW has watered down the M badge so much that it has to distinguish between M cars, BMW M Sport models, and BMW M Performance models. Yet, all 3 of them will have the same M badge all over them. And if you're a BMW M purist, it's marketing schemes like this that make the M brand feel kind of cheap. BMW's M is at risk of becoming a marketing exercise, a way to sell appearance packages and bump quarterly sales figures, rather than being a badge that guarantees bespoke engineering and a unique driving experience. I have to say though, while it all sounds like doom and gloom, BMW is really just doing what the market's asking for. People want new cars to be faster than the old ones, and BMW delivers. People want more technology than the old cars, and BMW delivers. People want more comfort than the old cars, and BMW delivers. All of the gadgets, the lightning-fast transmission, the adaptive suspensions that can change the whole personality of the car with a press of the button, they're all in response to what we want, what we vote for with our dollars. And this much is undeniable. No matter how much people like me sit on our high horse and complain about the delicate art of balance and feel, actual buyers care far more about sheer capability and versatility. There is one caveat though, and that was the F87 M2. Released in 2015, it was basically the 1M again, but now with slightly more power and slightly more weight. And while the M2 was most certainly a success, it wasn't going to last in its original form. Because it was here in the mid-2010s that BMW realized that fully juicing the M badge was the profitable path forward. The value of that M started to slip away in the eyes of OG fans like me or you when the M division traded its single-minded focus on racing for a single-minded focus on selling. And there is no greater proof of that than the current BMW M. The M stable now is both larger and more varied than it's ever been, and let's just consider what we got. There are the sports cars, the core lineup, the M3 and the M4, kind of reminiscent of the original M's, kind of not, considering the 3,800 pound curb weights minimum now. But despite the weight, they still happen to be monsters. A base M3 now has 473 horsepower and the competition has 503. Numbers that beat out even the V10 M5 from 15 years ago. And for the first time ever, there's an all-wheel drive option capable of 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. And thankfully, there's still a manual 6-speed option, albeit only on the rear-wheel drive base model. So at the very least, the purists can be happy, even if the auto is far faster. And on the road, well, they are as brutally fast as they are competent. The chassis are capable and more playful than the previous gen, in fact, so playful that it will even score your drifts with its onboard M Drift Analyzer. But as it turns out, nobody was really talking about any of this when the cars came out. There was another elephant in the room, and no, it wasn't that the cars weighed as much as elephants, it was the styling. Specifically, the grills. Oh, dear God, please, don't make me look at it. When BMW unveiled the G80 design with its oversized twin kidney grills, the internet basically exploded. Memes, mockery, disbelief. It was polarizing, to say the least. The styling was aggressive and broke from BMW's traditionally restrained look, and that upset a chunk of its fan base. Of course, now that it's been out for a bit, some have grown to like it, or some just simply don't care because the car's performance is just that good. But the controversy over the design is emblematic of BMW M today. push the envelope, split opinions, but always deliver results. So the M3 and M4 are good cars, proof that BMW still knows how to make a performance car. But behind the M3 and M4 is the compact M car, the G87 M2. As I mentioned before, the M2 was essentially the closest thing to an old M car in spirit. It was smaller, it was simpler, it was rowdy, it was fun. I say was because, well, the current M2 weighs in at 3,750 pounds. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm actually kind of impressed. I have no idea how they made a compact sports car weigh as much as a full-size sedan. Truly, I will never understand it. But hey, this time it's got a full-fat M3 engine, rear-wheel drive, and a 6-speed manual transmission. So I guess it's not all bad, as long as you're not looking at the front, or the rear, or the side. But now we move on and get to the real moneymakers of the M department, the SUVs and beyond. The BMW M lineup now includes high-performance SUVs like the X3M, X5M, X6M, and the latest headline grabber, the BMW XM. And the XM deserves special attention because it's a symbol of just how far M has strayed from God's light, or maybe not, depending on your opinion of this video. And well, in the entire history of BMW M, the brand has only developed one car from the ground up, meaning it wasn't based on any other BMW base model, and that one car was the holy grail of BMWs, the M1. And like I mentioned at the start of this video, this was the car responsible for the very nature of BMW M. It was the blueprint for M engineers going forward, which is why they sell for over $500,000 now. It's the price you pay for a car that is literally history. But then, in 2022, the BMW M division decided, let's make history again and build a second car entirely from the ground up. And that second car, ladies and gentlemen, was the BMW XM, a giant hybrid ultra luxury SUV, 6,000 pounds of what the It's stuffed to the gills with a twin turbo V8 and an electric motor for a combined 644 horsepower in standard form and 738 horsepower in the new label red edition. And it's also packed with every luxury goodie and edgy design cue that BMW could think of. The exterior is aggressive to the point of brutality. Huge kidney grills, illuminated no less, sharp creases, an overall shape that has been described as both futuristic and grotesque. And the interior, well, it's clear there was a bottle of absinthe involved. As for the performance, well, in a straight line, it's an absolute bully. It does 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds and a quarter mile in 11.6 seconds. It defies physics in the way only modern technology can, and on paper, well, it'll cost you over $160,000 to buy. But here's my question, who the heck is buying this? Who asked for a super hybrid crossover that's trying to be an M car? Motor Trend called the car kind of a mess, and I think they were just being nice. The XM seems to be M's attempt to redefine the high end, to say we can do ultra luxury and ultra performance in one car. And some folks love that BMW had the audacity to build it, but others, me, think that it's the ultimate proof that BMW has lost its mind. And considering the choices they've been making over the last few years, blisteringly fast sports sedans with faces only a blind mother could love, tech-laden compact performance coupes that weigh more than a truck, and heavyweight hybrid SUVs that cost as much as a supercar, it really begs the question, are these cars made for people, or are these just cars made for algorithms? All of these cars are undeniably capable, more powerful, and quicker than any of their ancestors, but it seems like BMW cares more about shock value than they do brand value these days. And more I see people online criticizing BMW M cars rather than praising them. And every new release seems almost like rage bait for the classic car enthusiast. But the truth is, we could probably make that same comment and this same video about every single enthusiast car brand, and kind of have, but my point is this. we have to consider the world that BMW operates in now. Regulations and environmental concerns have forced every car maker to downsize engines, add electrification, improve fuel efficiency, and BMW is no exception. The days of high-revving, naturally aspirated engines are gone. Stringent emissions targets made sure of that. And turbocharging, for all the flack it gets from purists, was a necessity for BMW to deliver high performance in this modern world. And looking ahead, electrification is the name of the game. The newest M5 is going to be a plug-in hybrid. An electrified M5 10 years ago, that would have sounded like science fiction. But here we are. And beyond the regulatory stuff, one thing that we cannot ignore is market trends, specifically the SUV trend. Sales data shows time and time again that people want higher seating positions and more practicality. They want to ensure that their passengers are as safe as possible, even if that means that pedestrians are pretty much guaranteed to get vaporized. And it's thanks to the M SUVs that the M division has become such a massive profit source for BMW. In 2024, the M division alone sold over 206,000 vehicles. That accounted for 9.4% of all BMW sold, M's best year ever. To put that into perspective, just 10 years prior, BMW M sold just 31,000 cars. You don't achieve that kind of growth by selling only stick-shift coupes to a small group of enthusiasts. You do it by expanding the portfolio, selling 500 horsepower SUVs to wealthy soccer moms. Money talks, and BMW M has followed the money into new segments and new technologies. And the truth is, BMW hasn't completely abandoned the die-hard enthusiasts. They've just become one consideration among many. For example, they kept the manual transmission alive in the M2 and the M3, M4, when rivals like Audi and Mercedes have all but given up on rowing your own gears. And those manual models are a smaller percentage of sales. In the case of the M3, it's less than 20%, but BMW M knows it's a point of pride and heritage to offer them. And on that same note, BMW is finally making the M3 touring, something that fans had begged them to make for decades. It was a pure enthusiast's play. It's not in the US, and that's a crime, but it exists. And the M division has also given us packages like the CSL, the CS competitions, souped up versions of their respective M cars. And yet, at the very same time, BMW is preparing its fan base for an electrified future. The i4, the iX, the inevitable electric M3, they will wear the M badge. But will we consider them to be real M cars? That question might end up being the next big controversy, but if history is a guide, the M division will try and make them fast and fun, even if they're lacking in feel. And that is the whole point, my friends. BMW M was never about sticking to the old school way of doing things. They were about testing boundaries, being on the technological cutting edge, and they haven't thrown away their past. They're leveraging it, celebrating it, while also not staying frozen in time. It's a delicate balance, one that I don't think they get right all the time. But on one hand, you can't look at an XM or a 635 horsepower M5 and not see engineering ambition. But on the other hand, it's clear that the M division's goals now are far more than just motorsports. Car enthusiasts like you or me grew up idolizing a certain era of M car. That's our benchmark for what feels real. And anything that deviates from that feels like a betrayal, but let's be honest. Enthusiasts have always greeted change with skepticism. Remember, there were folks that complained when the E46 M3 came out because it was larger and heavier than the E36. And then the E90 M3 rocked up with a V8, breaking the tradition of inline-six M3s, and there was plenty of grumbling then. And then the F80 M3 came with turbos. And now the G80 M3 comes with all-wheel drive and the new front end. It's a cycle. And the irony is that a lot of those early betrayals are now beloved. The hate for the E46 became love, the complaints about the E90 became compliments. Sometimes it takes time and perspective to appreciate what's new and different. And while BMW M started all those years ago as passion and precision forged in competition, today it's a thriving business making fast cars that work for more people than ever before. And well, if you hate their current lineup, that's okay too. But maybe just be patient, because just like your favorite E46 or E39, you might find that you'll come to love the new stuff too. Well, maybe not all of it. Oh, Jesus Christ, it's disgusting. Thank you so much for watching. You can watch another video right here that I picked out just for you, and you can access our member section to get early access to videos as well as behind the scenes vlogs, builds, and more stuff like that. Just hit the join button below the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.